Who I am, I'm a partner at Reintzel Kunz Lesher, the accounting firm, Reading, Lancaster, York, but I'm actually not a CPA. I'm an IT guy. We have a consulting practice, 31 consultants in the Arcade LE Solutions group that does outside consulting all over the country. My background is software development. I'm a SQL Server guy. That's most of the stuff that I work on at this point in time, other than the business. So I thought it would be good to start off with some agenda topics and some definitions. We had an IT roundtable yesterday at our office with some IT managers, and one of the discussion points was what is cloud today. The definition's kind of blurry, and we did a session on antivirus, and some of the antivirus folks, you have to watch what their definition of cloud is, because all of the software gets installed down anyway. So what's really in the cloud? There's a lot of terms out there, a lot of things you got to look at. I've got a slide on some of those things. So we'll start with some definitions. I have a bunch of examples, pros and cons that we'll talk about related to hosting, SaaS, PaaS, IaaS solutions as well. I have a couple of demo sites that we'll hop into, including Office 365, and talk about some technical considerations to think about, some legal concerns, etc. So some definitions. Everyone says, well, this new thing, the cloud. There's been cloud around for a long time. In the PC world, we used to call it an application service provider back in the 90s. Before that, it was mainframe hosted centers. GM did it with Ross Perot in the 70s. This cloud thing isn't really new. They just keep renaming it. There's software as a service. Software as a service to me is like a NetSuite or an Intact type solution. Those are both accounting solutions. I have NetSuite fired up if we wanted to look at that as well. That's what software as a service to me means. Cloud computing, a general term used for anything that involves delivering hosted solutions over the internet. If you have infrastructure inside of your walls and you connect it to something in the cloud, maybe it's a Barracuda backup solution. You have a device, but yet it pushes all your data offsite. Your infrastructure becomes part of the cloud. I know there's a Comcast person here today. They have a cloud phone solution. We have a small legal office client that we do, and he spun out of another firm that had a phone system, and he didn't want to invest in a full phone system, so we recommended a Comcast 5-user phone system. He doesn't have infrastructure for it. He just gets phones. They're covered on the service contract, just like buying a cable box at home. So it's kind of nice. He doesn't have to worry about it because he's not a technical guy. S+S, software plus services. Welcome. Sorry, all the expensive seats in the back. So up here. Software plus services. This can be a joint solution, almost like a co-located type solution. We do some work with a company called Expedient in Pittsburgh. They actually do that, and D&E did do it. Windstream tries to do it, but it will give you the ability that it could be their equipment and their software licensing that you're just renting from them, or you could buy the box and send it to them so you own the property. So it could be a combination of both, and we'll talk about some of those inside of here. And then PaaS, Platform as a Service. Rackspace is a perfect example of that. Even Amazon services today does some of that. Google does some of that. So that's becoming a little more prevalent. There's another one, and I think of it as S+S or SaaS. They've kind of given it their own acronym. Infrastructure as a service, kind of like platform as a service. Those types of things. A good example of that, Sage Payment Services has a solution for credit card. They're a merchant or a gateway. So you can actually connect with them. You don't have to put anything inside of your building for credit card transactions. So you don't have to worry about PCI compliance at all. And yet you're getting the credit card transaction processing going for you without actually dealing with any of the PCI compliant responsibilities inside. How many of you have a cloud, some type of cloud solution today? What are you using?
Well, we have a transaction management system that we don't have any of it inside our building.
Okay.
It's all on the web in there.
Okay.
On their servers.
Nice. Nice. And what was the purpose of going that way? Is it kind of proprietary application that
No, it's
fits your needs?
convenience. I mean,
Okay.
We have 137 agents who run all over the county, and they can get to their transactions from anywhere.
Yeah.
And the cost of paper is no more for us.
Yeah.
So.
And you?
We have a cloud solution for clients
Okay.
to use,
Oh, good.
accounting and so forth.
Nice. The thing that I guess one of the big things to me and the misnomer to me is, you know, it really depends what people are looking for. I mean, the cloud isn't always necessarily cheaper. It just depends if you want some of the headache. I mean, Salesforce.com isn't cheap compared to other CRM packages, but they're, you know, selling it right and left. But if you look at it per user per month, it's actually a lot more than a lot of on-premise suites. The NetSuite, an ERP package that we actually sell, is a lot more expensive than the ERP package we sell that's on-premise. But some people just want it. They want the convenience of it. They don't want the headache of infrastructure. But you know, when you in today's world, if any of you are responsible for ERP packages, and you know, let's say you buy a $100,000 ERP solution, and the annual maintenance is 20%, and everyone gets excited about, what do you mean my annual maintenance is 20% every year? Well, with NetSuite, if it's $100,000 a year, it's $100,000 every year. There's no, I mean, that's the price. Now their spin on it is you have no infrastructure, you potentially don't have IT, you don't have to, it's multi-tenant, so there is no upgrade, so to speak. So that's just something to keep in mind.
But before we get off the cloud, how reliable is it? I mean, really, it's just a pack of servers sitting somewhere. I mean,
I have a slide that talks about that, but,
okay.
but I'll chat about it a little bit here. I mean, it depends.
How do you know?
Research.
Fine.
You know, taking, asking other folks out there, finding reliable research. You know, they need I'll reference it to my wife. They need an open table or TripAdvisor for cloud services, where the ratings, you know, hopefully mean something. And it's tough. Asking references, reading the material, and you know, the best thing is to be able to hopefully get a reference that you know, not one that they're providing you, because they're only going to give you the good ones, obviously.
Well, you know, these things only go down, you know, once every 3 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I worked in corporate America, you know, they had a huge IT department, huge bank of servers. And they called me one day and said, "We lost your database."
Yeah.
I said, you know, and they gave it a week old.
Yeah.
They gave it back.
I mean, it's much better than it was 10, 15 years ago. I mean, the Microsoft Azure platform, if you have a database sitting up in the Microsoft Azure world, they actually have 3 server banks where that data goes. So let's say you have an on-premise machine today and you write to the SQL server. Where's it getting backed up? How often is it getting backed up? What's your point of recovery in a service level agreement? If you're in the Azure space, they're actually not just backing up the database. When they write that transaction to the Azure SQL Server, they actually write it to all 3 at the same time in 3 different locations.
Wow. You pay
So,
for that.
yeah, it's part of the fee and part of the component, and you have to sit down and figure out, what's the return on that? Is it worth it? Do I need it? And some of the legal things related to that, you have to kind of think and read through the contracts to say, if I sign up with, Expedient and they take my data and stick it in their cloud, do they, according to their contract, keep it on their servers in North America? Or do they spin it off to cheap servers overseas in a country that doesn't have any regulations? They're allowed to share that data. And you have to read that contract and know if they're going to spin it out of the country. And especially if you're, HIPAA compliancy rules or PCI compliancy rules that you have to comply with, because some of those countries don't have them. Yes?
Talk a little bit about how we stack up infrastructure-wise from a connection to the cloud versus other areas of the country. You hear the grumblings about Verizon. Thank goodness for Comcast. But the old Ts that Verizon just aren't supporting anymore that go down when there's a fire in Philadelphia. We see the end result of it here. What are your thoughts?
I'll say thank you to Comcast as well, because
You don't hear that enough.
good thing I came to that. I'm liking it. That other company that moved into the area is horrible, and I mean, we couldn't get off of Windstream fast enough, personally. And again, if anyone from Windstream here, I'm sorry if you're offended. It's just atrocious, and I'm pulling off any client I can. Anyone that asks for recommendation, I can't give it. So across the country, we are probably as good as anyone that I've seen. The thing that you need to do, and you can do with Comcast, is just to ask for, even if you don't want to go to Verizon as your backup in an environment like that, you can get different trunks if you need to for different connectivity points through a same carrier, whether it is Verizon or AT&T or whomever. But our ability to get very high speed performance in what I'll call, outside of the big city is pretty darn good. I mean, we have, Chicago, New York-like abilities here in Lancaster County, which is and Reading, which is pretty amazing here in Susquehanna Valley. So I'm pretty impressed. If you think about where would you build a data center, where would you put one? Put one where utilities are cheap. Northwest up in Washington, where all the water's flowing and they're generating power like mad, is a great place for somebody. And there's a ton of them up there. A little company called Microsoft sitting up there. So that's where I'd look. Utilities more than that connectivity. It's kind of table stakes today, in my opinion. The wireless stuff has gotten better as well. Actually, personally, I would love to see some of the big players like Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, Cisco actually slap Google down a little bit. So I'm waiting for them to get together and make a power move to, keep Google out of crap that they don't belong in. There's I don't know if anyone's tried Google Voice or Google Talk. we deal with a company in Denver, and every time they call me, I tell them to call me back on their cell phone because I can't hear them. The connection is horrible compared to what we've experienced with Verizon or with Comcast. The quality isn't there, and they don't care. I mean, you know, at $9.99 a month, they're getting paid billions of dollars by advertisers. They don't care if they make any money off of it. Sort of like Costco, make money off of selling the card, not necessarily the food. There's a bunch of links in here. I was saying there's a great Wikipedia link in here for you. I'll make the slide deck available, and you can kind of check it out. But it really dives into a bunch of stuff. It's a really thorough document there. Cloud computing as a service, again, just to elaborate, the service is broadly divided into basically 3 categories these days: infrastructure, platform, and software. The name cloud computing was inspired by the cloud symbol. It's often used to represent the internet in flowcharts and diagrams. It's that simple. Again, there's kind of new technology under the hood, but it's not really a new concept. It's been around for a while. What's made it more prevalent is the broadband that we have available to us. And here's some examples I'm going to dive into. In no way is what I'm going to give you a full extensive list, but I wanted to give a broad array of some examples, and there's hyperlinks to each of them so you can kind of dive into more of them. Obviously Google, everything about them, the Google Apps, Gmail, all of those things are out there and fully cloud. Sun, which is now, I guess, part of Oracle, you know, they've put a lot of spin on this. They love it because they have really high-end, expensive servers. And so they like to spin in that space. They have the openoffice.org, which is now, I guess, part of Apache, but so, you know, trying to compete with Office 365. Office 365, this has gone through 3 or 4 name changes as well, to, like cloud. Has anyone tried it? Is anyone using it? Does anyone know anything about it? Microsoft currently has kind of 2 cloud naming conventions to the things that they provide. So Azure is more of a high-end component, full server, full SQL, full SharePoint. You can do pretty much whatever you want to in it. Including you can rent space on it, like rack space, and move your apps up to their Azure platform. They built 3 mega facilities. One's in southern Chicago. That was the first one. I mean, just this monstrous warehouse. And basically, if you get the chance to ever go see it, you can actually find it. I'll see if I can find the link and put it in the documents for you. I had some pictures of it, but they actually get HP and other providers to build a full server infrastructure inside of a tractor trailer. So it's just filled with server racks, it's filled with disks, it has power supplies in it, you name it, it's in there. And it basically has an outlet on the outside of the tractor trailer. They back the thing in, set it on the rack, and plug it in, and all the servers power up. And that they have this warehouse just stacked full of that. That's their Azure platform.
That's fun. I have a shipping container out back in my business that I use for storage.
Yeah.
I'll just say it's a server site and impress the hell out of everybody.
It's our DR site. So, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, and the amount of power being drawn through there and the amount of data going through there in a day's time is phenomenal. On the flip side, they have Office 365. We've actually seen and been moving people off to this So if you have Exchange in-house as your email server, you could potentially move the entire thing to the cloud, and you basically pay per user per month. They can have real Exchange, not Gmail, so real Exchange server with their own domain name. They get Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, OneNote. They can get SharePoint as an add-on option. So in the cloud, they could fire up per user per month and have a complete cloud solution. What's the benefit? Well, they don't have to buy Exchange and the server. They don't have to have an administrator to deal with the Exchange server. If they're a cyclical business and today they have 100 users, and when they ramp up they get to 140 and they need 40 more licenses for 60 days, you can actually buy 60 days worth of licenses and then drop back to 100. So instead of having to have 140 licenses throughout the year when you don't need them. The other benefit is they're doing all of your backups. They've been down once in 3.5 years. They had a blackout day.
What does the price point range on that?
I actually have a link to it in the last slide, but it's unbelievably reasonable. We have a client that switched to it from in-house. They have 75 users.
15.
Is it, what is it, 15?
I think it was 15 last time I checked.
Somewhere in that space? Okay.
It's 20.
20?
I just looked it up.
Okay, thank you.
That's for the mid-sized business.
All about inflation.
Yeah, well, and you have to, and look, because it's not one price, there'll actually be a menu there, just like Salesforce.com, depending upon what you check off and what you wanted. But you know, we had a user with 20, we had, our largest user on Office 365 has 175 user accounts on it.
Do you get better technical support, like I can't do this in Word, how do you do it? Do they answer that?
No.
Better? No.
No. They do have some, you do get some access to some online knowledge base, and they have some video training online, but there's no chat there for technical services around Excel or Word. But you know, if you think about the beast of a server environment that you're going to need to fire up a SharePoint server in-house, and some people have drug their feet and said, boy, we'd love to have SharePoint, but the licenses are expensive and the infrastructure is huge. It's a good way to get your foot in the door.
Does it include updates?
Yes.
Like, so if Microsoft if Office 2010 is out today, and next year 2015, whatever comes out, then it includes that.
Yes.
Well, that's
Whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
There isn't a don't upgrade me today.
Got it.
That's the downside. When you wake up one morning and you're looking at 2013 instead of 2010 Word.
But all the data moves over, it's just...
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So when you know it's coming, they give you a warning and let you know when it's coming, but it just turns on. So you can't wake up and go, well, today isn't really convenient.
My question regarding the cloud, that I think that I've found over the last 3 years, and as I'm sitting here thinking about this, I don't even think I realized this might be a possibility. Do you find that, I'm very tied into Google. I know you're not a big fan, but I
this is an argument we have in our own office. We've got Google lovers, and
I find I'm using their Drive more often. I find I've been using Google Apps for 3 years. Their email is flawless for me.
Yep.
And all the other things that come with it. What I think I see coming on the horizon is a complete paradigm shift from backing up your stuff to the cloud, because the hard drives are getting bigger and bigger and bigger on your laptops, on your desktop, and moving everything to the cloud to have a mirror backup so you can recover. Are you finding that it's going to reverse, where so much is in the cloud now, and all your software. For instance, even Adobe, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but Adobe Creative Cloud, that is insane what they're doing in the cloud.
Yeah.
And I know that's new, relatively new for them. But then having all your files then in the cloud, now, number one, there's a big concern and a communication about who owns the data and getting your data back. But I don't want the programs necessarily picking up my software, my hard drive, taking up all that space. So do you find that it's going to shift to, you're going to back up to mirror back down to what, if you're keeping your files in the cloud, you're going to want to have that backup just in case, as it was brought up a little bit earlier. I mean, if you have a blackout, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, and that's, you're I call it business continuity instead of disaster recovery. Your business continuity really becomes, a redundant pipe. Okay, well, what if Office 365 is down? How do I get to my contacts? My whole world's in there. Running in a cached mode with Outlook will let you at least have the stuff sitting there if you're not connected. So you can run Outlook as a cache in that space. I'm not sure what Google would do. Can you use Google, and this is a question because I don't actually know, can you use Google Docs if you don't have a connection?
They just, as I'm finding, they're just making that switch within the last 3 months, is because you actually have an app now that comes down onto your computer that you're accessing. You can access that stuff.
Did they do that themselves or in conjunction with OpenOffice?
It's out of my expertise. I think it's themselves.
I'm not sure if they spun off the OpenOffice public domain stuff or not, but yeah.
Sure.
So, I mean, up until then, if you wanted to use Google Word, so to speak, if you didn't have an internet connection, you couldn't do it. So if you were sitting on a plane, which is rare these days without an internet connection, I travel a lot, and thank goodness I'm putting it on the planes. You were stuck. You couldn't do the work. So, yeah, you can always download like Notepad Plus or whatever. But I mean, my opinion is yes, but with the folks, the broadband folks, making things as seamless as possible. I mean, that's the big thing. Just making sure we have connectivity. The other risk to me, and I have this listed a little later as well, is just making sure you understand the contractual agreement. Salesforce.com, if you call them and say, hey, I want to sever the contract today, can you just back up my stuff and send it to me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, get it yourself. I mean, so if you've been putting stuff into Salesforce for years, you've got a job to pull it back out. That you can write some stuff against their API to extract the data, but they're not going to back it up and send you a file. Not part of their service. There's a lot of people out there making money doing that for you, though. But yeah, I think so. The bigger challenge to me has been, from a support standpoint of view, has been just the different, not just devices, and as quickly as they're coming out, different platforms, different browser versions. If it's in the cloud, it's running in a browser. And to make an app look and feel the same, let alone work at all, in every version of Chrome, every version of Firefox, every version of Safari, every version of IE is daunting.